Many people argue about what the four kingdoms represent in the belief that identifying the first three historical kingdoms will help us identify the prophetic fourth kingdom from afar. I don't necessarily buy into that theory. I think that when the leaders of the world decide that we need a one-world government divided into 10 regions with 10 rulers over those regions, it's going to be blatantly obvious to any believers on earth at that time that the fourth kingdom has just been put into place and the Antichrist's arrival is imminent. In other words, regardless of what we believe the first three historical kingdoms to be, the fourth is going to be such an unmissable fulfillment of prophecy that our interpretations of the previous three won't actually matter too much. And indeed, you'll notice that Daniel doesn't seem to be much interested in the first three kingdoms either. He just wants to know why this fourth beast looks so much different from the rest. That's his focus. Having said that, it's worth looking at the various theories that have been put forward regarding the four kingdoms. The classic view of the four kingdoms is that the first gold head or lion kingdom is Babylon, the second bear kingdom is Medo-Persia, the third leopard kingdom is Greece, and the fourth kingdom of iron is Rome. Babylon is specifically identified as the head of gold by Daniel, so there's not much debate there. The Medes and Persians then invaded Babylon, and that's represented by the chest with two arms. Next, the Greek Empire started off unified but was divided into two after the death of Alexander the Great, and that's signified by the belly of the statue dividing into two thighs. The fourth kingdom of Rome then had two centres, Rome in the west and Constantinople in the east, hence the two iron legs on the statue. Since the feet of the statue also contains iron mixed with clay, it is therefore believed that the Roman Empire will be resurrected in the end times. This theory obviously places a great deal of suspicion on the European Union, which was initiated with the Treaty of Rome and perhaps the Catholic Church. A second school of thought, which could be termed the Western perspective, says that Great Britain has always been represented by a lion and the United States has always been represented by an eagle. So when the Bible talks about the first empire as a lion with eagle's wings and then says its wings were pulled off, we can't help but notice that the United States was once a British colony, the two countries were once connected, and that after the American Declaration of Independence in 1776, when the lion had its wings pulled off, so to speak, Britain went on to establish the largest empire in world history. This view hits a snag, however, when we consider that Daniel already specifically identifies the first kingdom as Babylon, not Britain. That should kill this theory stone dead, but for the sake of knowing the different points of view, let's go on to consider that this perspective then says that the second bear kingdom is Russia, which had a communist empire of sorts in the Soviet Union days, and which since the 19th century has been symbolized by a bear. Most significantly, the Charter for the United Nations was written by Algar Hiss, a convicted communist spy who was a cohort of Joseph Stalin. Therefore, the United Nations was initiated with the idea of forming a global socialist government. What about the third kingdom that looked like a leopard and which had 4 birds' wings on its back and 4 heads? The Western perspective says that the leopard is most closely associated with Germany, while the national symbol of France is a rooster. Put the two together and you get an empire ruled by a Franco-German alliance. I can actually find no evidence that leopards have ever symbolized Germany. The only connection seems to be that their military use a tank called the Leopard, but that's a tenuous link, and it's another blow to the Western perspective. However, it is true to say that the European Union is now completely dominated by a Franco-German alliance. So the Western perspective is that the final global empire will somehow incorporate the ideas, essence and character of these previous empires involving Rome, Britain, America, Germany, France, Russia, the European Union and United Nations. Then finally, there's the Eastern view. Eastern scholars say that God never concerns himself prophetically with Europe or the West, and that end-time prophecy focuses entirely on the Middle East. Therefore, they would say that the lion, it represents Babylon, which is Iraq, the bear represents Persia, which is Iran, and up until this point they actually agree with the classic view, but then they deviate and say that the third leopard kingdom represents the Ottoman Empire of the Turks. They believe that the Fourth World Empire will therefore be an Islamic one that comes out of those fifth trumpet nations by the Euphrates. And since Iraq, Iran and Turkey have already had their day as empire capitals, they believe the Fourth Empire will be based in Syria, most likely Damascus. That's where the Assyrian Antichrist is likely to come from in their view. Is there any evidence that Muslims are working towards creating a new empire? Well, quite a lot actually. In fact, it's no secret that Muslims are trying to create a kind of United States of Islam under one spiritual leader. The Islamic word for empire is caliphate, and although they haven't had a caliphate recently, they have had several in the past. During Muhammad's life, they were united under his rule from 570 to 632 AD. Immediately after him came the Rashidun Caliphate, and that was succeeded by the Umayyad Caliphate. Following that came the Abbasid Caliphate, and then finally the most recent, the largest and perhaps the most well-known Islamic Caliphate was the Ottoman Empire based in Turkey. It ended on March the 3rd, 1924. Ever since the ending of the Ottoman Empire, Muslims have fundamentally been in disarray, divided by factions and infighting. All the while, as they see it, the dark shadow of the West has engulfed the world. They believe that the 20th century saw Western capitalism and liberalism bringing chaos, inequality, despotism, and international disorder. They believe the only solution for the whole planet is a new Islamic caliphate. According to Islamic prophecy, they believe the next caliphate will indeed be a global one, and that it will be ushered in by the 12th Imam, or Al-Mahdi, the Muslim Messiah. They believe this man will be a direct descendant of Muhammad and thus will be able to unify the entire Islamic world. In their prophetic writings, they see all the Islamic nations deferring ultimate authority to him as he wages war in the West, defeating it and imposing Sharia law, and reigning unchallenged for 7 years over a global empire. You can read about the Muslim plan for an end-time caliphate by going to this website. When we consider how the Muslim Brotherhood are currently trying to consolidate authority throughout the Middle East by agitating uprisings and revolutions, we can see that their long-term intention is to create the necessary conditions for the appearance of the Mahdi and his unified Islamic empire. The Arab Spring will not lead to freedom and democracy in the Middle East. Instead, it will lead to the political and cultural domination of Islam. When we compare all the views of the end-time kingdom, the classic Western and Eastern, we can see why people would hold to any one of them, although I have to say that the Western view is by far the weakest. But I would suggest that it will go something like this. All world leaders will willingly work together to create a global political structure which joins nations together and centralizes authority. We've already seen projects like this embodied in the European Union and the United Nations. We've also seen organisations like the G8 and G20 rise to prominence, and this is underpinned by a desire for greater cohesion in solving global issues, global warming, global security, the global economy, etc. Indeed, politicians, the super-rich elite, spiritual gurus and members of secret societies have been talking about creating a one-world order for many years.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
News, debate, and opinion for Tuesday, March 3rd. Live from New York, Lou Dobbs.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
And I believe it will also be said of this age, the first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, perhaps one even greater than at the time of the Industrial Revolution, a new world order was created.
I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
This will all lead to a time when a global constitution will come into play that all nation states will sign up to, believing it to be the path to world peace and prosperity. The earth will then be divided into 10 regions, and a council of 10 leaders will be appointed to rule each of those regions. This global empire will obviously require Middle Eastern representation, and since Muslims will have been busy wiping out Christians and consolidating their power in that region, the World Council representative for the Middle East will probably be Muslim. Because of political correctness and spiritual blindness, we would expect the leaders in Europe and the West to support that, especially if the man in question initially presents himself as a peaceful moderate or even hides a spiritual allegiance altogether. All it would take is for that man to unveil his true identity once in power, or for a successor to come along after him, unite the Islamic world as their messianic Mahdi, send out the call for the 200 million to gather so that Islamic prophecy might be fulfilled, and from that region wipe out a third of the world's population. Having conquered many nations and having taken advantage of the new political structure, he will finally turn on Israel, the nation that causes the greatest affront to the Muslim mind. Jacob's trouble will then begin, and the true nature of this man as the Antichrist will be revealed. This is indeed how Islamic prophecy itself predicts the last hour. Their prophecies say, the last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews. The Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the tree Garhad would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews. In other words, I believe the framework of the one world order will be established by all the world leaders, but it will be hijacked from within by the Antichrist. The little horn will rise up from within the system once it's already been established. Whatever our thoughts about the first three kingdoms, I will repeat that Daniel actually pays very little attention to them. It's the fourth that really intrigues him. And whatever identity we attach to the previous three, it doesn't really affect the obvious nature of the fourth. An empire, global, 10 rulers, dominated by one, comes in peace, turns violent halfway through, subdues the earth first, then turns on Jerusalem. People are going to know it when they see it.